12th of March 2020. Buy low Glen, the toilet paper aisle. 20 cents a roll. Due to the current high demand for toilet paper, we've introduced a temporary limit of 1 pack per transaction. This will help maintain availability for all our customers. Thank you for your patience. We apologise for any inconvenience caused. And it says it again. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 metres. Double deck stack. 20 metres of empty shelves in Glen Bylow, Coles supermarket. So that's fairly convincing, is it not? And the sheeples who have panic bought the toilet paper are not apparently sufficiently bright as to realise that you can wipe your date with tissues. We have plenty of tissues. We have plenty of hand towels. And here in Woolworths, they're not quite out of toilet paper.
Bloody ridiculous.
But they've got some tissues. Not as many tissues. As far as I know, that's the first time for about a week that there's been toilet paper in the supermarkets. To be honest, I was not expecting there to be toilet paper in Woolworths. It sort of ruins what would otherwise be a perfect video, which I should have made yesterday when I first noticed underneath the "Thou shalt not" sign we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, 25, about 30 toilet rolls at $1.50 each. Or $70 a box, which is pretty much the exact normal price for toilet paper as individual rolls or as a box. So over there we have the Coles Bylow supermarket, where the sheeples have been fleeced into panic buying and they believe the world is out of toilet paper. Down the road, another 100 metres, and their aisle, 50 metres, 2 stacks high, is almost completely depleted and run out. Apparently because the people who believe in only shopping in supermarkets, who believe in panic buying, have never considered looking outside the supermarket for their toilet paper, because why would you think that you could buy toilet paper anywhere but the supermarket? Australia's out of toilet paper. Dickheads on Facebook and Twitter sphere say so. So that's how Australia is actually responding to coronavirus disease 2019. Walkles on a lot to YouTube. Situation remains the same, all secure. In this confused little corner of what was once the great British Empire of Celticness. Okay, so this morning in my feed, for the first time for a long time, I found a friend of mine, LoreleiLa, from the wilds of Cornwall, had posted a video titled "The Corona Diaries, an Introduction." She's had the idea that because a lot of people are having to self-isolate, might be a good time to resurrect what used to be a bit of a tradition on YouTube of making response videos. So it's a bit over a month since I first mentioned coronavirus, and the fact that I'd found some early coronavirus preppers here in Glen. So the thing about this coronavirus is that there are numbers attached to it. Now they reckon that your average person who gets infected is going to infect about another 3 people with it, 2.5 to 3.5. They reckon about 60 or so % of the population, maybe 70%, are probably going to get it. How does that compare, for example, to something like Spanish flu in 1919? Well, Spanish flu infected 50% of the population, and the Spanish flu killed 2% of the people who got infected. Okay, initially they reckoned that when this coronavirus appeared in China, it was killing perhaps 2% of the population. And the Chinese responded initially a little bit slowly, but then they really got into it. They locked down half a dozen or a dozen cities with 10 million people in each city. No touch delivery of groceries, you're not allowed outside your apartment. No transport in or out, although they made a mess of that in the beginning at Wuhan. And they were talking 2% death rate. However, it also turns out that you can go for 2 weeks, perhaps as long as 28 days, 4 weeks, completely asymptomatic. Not feeling bad, not looking sick, hoopty-doopty-doo, and the amount of virus being shed by your upper respiratory tract per square centimetre will be as high during the first 2 weeks of this asymptomatic period as it will be when you actually finally get the high fever and the dry cough and you start to come up with all of the traditional symptoms of flu. So the idea that each person who's infected is only going to infect another 3 people, shall we say, that may be subject to further change when people know a little bit more about that which they are talking whereof. Because it may be that you're only going to infect another 3 people after you realise that you have got the virus. You might infect 5 or 6 before you know that you're sick. Don't know the answer to that one. About a week, 10 days ago, they said that the actual death rate's closer to 3.5%. However, in India they had 98 cases and 15 deaths. But in India, they were only testing people who were already sick enough to go into hospital. In China, they were testing pretty much anybody who looked as if they might be sick or might have been in contact with somebody who had the virus. In South Korea, they're testing nearly everybody in the country. In Iran, they said that nobody had it until the Minister for Health got it. The Pope's got the sniffles, but he says it's not corona. However, in Italy, 6.8% of the people who catch coronavirus die. That's as of yesterday. So my thoughts on the numbers run as follows. If 60% of the population is infected, and if 20% of the people who are infected require hospitalisation, and if half of the people who require hospitalisation require intensive care treatment, then you might be looking at a situation where 1/3 of them die anyway. That would give you your 3.5% death rate for everybody who's infected. If you haven't got the hospital beds available and you haven't got the intensive care beds available, then you might be looking at double, triple, maybe even quintuple the death rate. Italy is currently running double the 3.4% at 6.8. India, with 15 dead for 98 cases, yeah, that would be 5 times the baseline death rate. But the baseline death rate assumes that you've got really, really good medical care. This morning on the radio, I heard that Australia was seriously on the point of banning travel to and from America. The excited status of Norte Americano, because not so much they have no more centres for disease control, because that budget measure was unable to be passed. They have actually still got a CDC. However, they wasted the entire period from when we knew there was a virus loose in China up until about 2 days ago. Australia has tested more citizens than the excited states of Norte Americano has tested, and in Norte Americano they have 10 times as many citizens. Tom Cruise has come out to Australia and brought the coronavirus with him. In Melbourne, they had 3 schools shut down this morning. 2 of them were because of people who came to Australia from America. There was a doctor, a 76-year-old doctor, who came to Australia from Denver, Colorado. He was sick on the flight, felt like he had the flu, so he got to Australia, decided that because he wasn't coming from Italy or Iran or China, therefore he wasn't coming from a condition red type country, so he went to work in his Toorak general practice, and he consulted 70 patients, and he went to 2 different nursing homes, and he did doctor's rounds there. And then he tested himself because he had a bit of a niggling, wouldn't it be interesting to find out, sort of a feeling. And when the health minister, federal health minister, said that she was aghast and appalled at what he'd done, he complained to the Australian Medical Association, who said, oh, you shouldn't say nasty things about him because doctors haven't got anybody who can come in and take over their practice. Like, how can you expect a doctor who thinks he might have coronavirus to isolate himself? Now, doctors tell other people to get isolated, they don't isolate themselves. And he didn't meet the guidelines anyway. So yeah, America's about to be struck off, and I think the whole of Europe, by 3 o'clock this afternoon when I was going to town, the whole of Europe is about to be struck off as a place that Australians can go and visit. So my daughter's planned, upcoming, forthcoming, paid for, booked, ticketed 6-week trip to Europe with 12 countries in a 4-week bus trip, due to depart Australia on the 19th of April. That might not be going to happen. Poor little bugger. Last year she was going to go on the same trip and she broke a leg, and it didn't happen. Who knows whether there's going to be airlines running afterwards. One of the really important things to pay attention to is that all this projected 3, 6, 10, 15% death rate, it particularly affects baby boomers, people born before 1956 and their parents, proper baby boomers, people born in the 10 years following World War II, when all the people who had not had children during the war suddenly started to breed. After the drunken orgies which occurred in all the Allied capital cities and most of the towns following VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, and VP Day 8 months later in Victory in the Pacific. And yeah, there's not quite camera evidence of people having sex in the streets. There are still photographs that look highly suggestive, but that's pretty much what happened. Everybody got drunk and went a bit bananas. And there was a huge boom in babies. Well, the baby boomers, the over 65s, doesn't look good for them. They seem to constitute the 20% of people who need hospital treatment and need intensive care. And it's particularly tough on men. And I can't help but notice the average age of people who attend Donald Trump's campaign rallies is about 67. So it looks like Donald Trump may be about to lose somewhere between 45 and 65% of his rusted on voters. It seems everybody who has consistently voted to go ahead with anthropogenic global warming for the last 40 or 50 years, yeah, they might be going to die before they can spend the kids' inheritance now. And the young kids from the Extinction Rebellion. They might be going to inherit the Earth a bit earlier than we thought. Maybe Greta Thunberg can be appointed Secretary General of the United Nations, and the people who are going to have to live on the Earth can set about doing something to make a difference to what their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents voted to do. There you go, Kathy. That's my response to your Corona Diaries video. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.